This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and today I am going to review the tag team pilot episode featuring WWE Hall of Famers Roddy Piper, and Jesse the Body Ventura, who went on to also be governor of Minnesota, and of course, he was in The Running Man, Predator, one of the Batman movies with Arnold. Both of these guys had pretty successful acting careers with Jesse. I think Jesse may have been in more films that actually did well than anyone other than The Rock out of wrestlers. And I would say Terry Funk might actually be the third there, because Terry Funk was in some more high-profile movies. But I really enjoyed this. I must say I'm a mark for that era of wrestling. I thoroughly enjoyed this. The story of it is Roddy Piper and Jesse Ventura are wrestling. They're a tag team wrestlers, obviously. And they're about to have a match against the Orient Express, Sato and Tanaka, managed by Mr. Fuji in LA. This was recorded in an actual LA Sports Arena wrestling event, as Bill Anderson told me about it in the shoot interview I did with him. Bill Anderson actually appears in this show as the ring announcer, as he was the ring announcer for the WWE card that afternoon in LA. He said that this was like a surprise match for the fans because they didn't advertise that Jesse and Piper were going to be on the card. Piper was supposedly retired at this point, I think, and Jesse was also hadn't wrestled. So it was a surprise for the fans in attendance. Bill got paid extra for being the ring announcer on the show too. However, they used Mean Gene's voice. They just showed Bill ring announcing with Mean Gene's voice dubbed over top of it. Shannon Tweed plays the promoter's wife. Shannon Tweed, of course, is married to Gene Simmons now. She looks totally different in this show. She basically tells Roddy and Jesse that they have to lose the match to the Orient Express or they're going to be blackballed from the business. So they definitely keep kayfabe going, which is one of the things I love about this show. They treat wrestling as if it's a real sport. Of course, Piper and Ventura don't want to do the job, so to speak, and they end up winning the match. So they end up being blackballed from wrestling. So they now have to find another job. So at first they start as movers, and there's a scene where they're moving a piano. And this is actually pretty funny, as Mark Dark Shadow tips me $2. Thank you, Mark Dark Shadow. They're moving this piano, and the piano goes down some stairs, breaks through a brick wall, and then like shoots out of the apartment building directly onto their moving truck, which ends their careers as movers. Then they're trying to figure out what they're going to do to pay the bills since they're blackballed from wrestling. They no longer have a moving truck. They're shopping in the grocery store, and they're dressed like they would be dressed. Like you always see Jesse Ventura in that leather jacket with like the pieces of leather hanging down whenever he's in public a lot these days. He's actually dressed like he would be dressed in real life in this show, which is kind of funny. But they're grocery shopping, and someone tries to rob the grocery store, and Jesse and Rowdy stop the robbery, beat up the culprits, and when the police end up coming, the police tell them, you guys should be cops because you handled that easily. So they end up going to police academy, where there's a scene where Jesse's firing his gun at a target, does really well. The instructor says, where'd you learn how to shoot like that? He says he was a former Navy SEAL. So they're taking elements of real life into this. They graduate police academy, and they're assigned as their very first job, their very first day, to protect a witness. She is a female who witnessed 2 police being murdered, and they're there to protect her so she can testify without being killed. Apparently, the woman that played this female was also in Ghostbusters, in the scene where Bill Murray is shocking this guy and this girl. I think he's asking them questions on what's on cards, testing their psychic ability and shocking them. And he's always shocking the guy. While this girl that was in Ghostbusters, in that scene, plays the female that Piper and Jesse Ventura are protecting. I believe she was also in a show called Charles in Charge at one point. I don't really remember that show. So at one point, some bad guys break into her house to try and kill her or kidnap her or whatever. And Jesse and Rowdy beat up the bad guys, but the girl gets away. So Jesse and Rowdy are now in trouble because they've lost the female, and they get suspended their first day on the job. So they decide that they're still concerned about the girl, and she did work at an animal shelter. She discussed that she likes to help get dogs adopted. By the way, she had a very nice house for a single woman that was a hairstylist in LA. Very, very large house for a single woman to afford on a hairstylist salary. I did notice that. But anyways, they remember that she worked at a dog shelter. They go to find her at the dog shelter, even though they're suspended. They decide to take over like an undercover police car, and they drive it like madmen. Another cop comes along with them, even though he knows that they're not supposed to have the car because they're suspended. They end up finding her at the shelter and driving her to the court in time to testify. But before she gets into the court, there's another confrontation with the bad guys, which Jesse and Piper win. And she testifies, and it's pretty much done at that point. The final scene is she brings a stray dog who had an injury to Jesse and Piper's apartment, to which the dog like jumps on Piper, and it seems like they are going to now have this dog as their mascot. So if the show had been picked up and continued, I guess Jesse and Piper would have had the dog as their sidekick. But unfortunately, the show never took off. There is one interesting point in the show where Piper says the most popular wrestlers in the world today are Jake the Snake, Hulk Hogan, and the Ultimate Warrior. And this came out in 1991. So it's interesting that those were the top 3 wrestlers in 91. That's pretty legit. I would have put Macho Man before Jake Roberts, though. I think Macho Man was more over than Jake Roberts. Mark Dark Shadow says this was the best era ever. Mike DeLeo says you are loved by millions of people. I don't know if you're talking about me, but I don't think I'm loved by millions of people. I think I'm more hated than loved, but there's definitely people that like me. But Jesse Ventura and Roddy Piper are definitely loved by millions of people. Watching this just makes me miss. I'm not going to say anything bad about the current wrestling product, which, by the way, SmackDown was back in the 0.4s this week. But it just makes me miss the old days of wrestling. The characters were just so much better in those days, and as cheesy as this was, it was very entertaining. I even enjoyed the commercials. There was a commercial for a Big Mac or a McDonald's steak burger, and I don't think that ever came out in Canada. And it must have been short-lived in the U.S. because this was the first I ever heard of it. But yeah, I guess there was a McDonald's steak burger. I would like to know what rating this show got. If anyone can look that up, I wonder what the rating was for this pilot episode. Ian, I'm going to actually block you because you're annoying me complaining about my chair squeaking. Chris Lee says Batista is up there in the movies now too. Oh, I forgot. You're right, Chris. Batista actually might be really close to Jesse. He's had bigger roles than Jesse in major films. So yes, actually you're right, Chris. I forgot about Batista because I guess I just didn't really like the Batista Marvel movies. But Batista was also in the Kickboxer reboot with one of my kickboxing trainers, Alain Moussi. So yeah, Batista's been in a lot. So you're right, Chris. Batista has eclipsed Ventura, and John Cena is getting up there too. But I'm still a bigger fan of Jesse than both Batista and Cena. So maybe that's why I didn't think of them. Mark Dark Shadow says he first saw Jesse at the Hamburg Field House in 1981. Mike DeLeo Typhoon interview. I'm sure at some point there will be. Alan Kesselman says they were more kayfabe back then than Drew McDonald is now. Drew McDonald is zero kayfabe. He doesn't kayfabe at all. Lockdown or not, every interview he does, he talks about how he's friends with his opponents. So you guys, the few that actually are fans of him, the Scottish people, because I guess you're happy about the first skirt wearing world champion in WWE history, and none of the Scottish wrestlers have made world champion before, so you're going to support him no matter how much of a dork he is. So good for you, but as I said, he's the lowest drawing champion in history as far as ratings and attendance go. That's a fact. You guys will make excuses for that, but that's a fact. But I didn't want to get into that. We're trying to keep this on Piper and Ventura. And Noel O'Reilly says Piper and Ventura are both very good actors. Especially love Jesse's Captain Freedom character in The Running Man. And Terry Funk is also a good actor. Jeff Doherty, Haku needs to be in the Hall of Fame. No argument for me. David Fontaine says Terry Funk was awesome in Roadhouse. He was. I really liked Roadhouse. Maybe I'll review that one day. But I am going to watch They Live because a very big supporter of this channel asked me to review They Live next. So I will. Michael Allen Rubin says Piper was Canadian, but he lived in Scotland at one point. I actually have Roddy Piper's book, but I only just started it. I didn't finish it. I don't know when he actually lived in Scotland because, first of all, he was never world champion. He is Roddy Piper, though. He's one of the best, without question. I wouldn't even put him in the same sentence as that other guy, but he was never world champion for whatever reason. He didn't need the title. That was one of the reasons. Chubby Cox says Terry Funk also had a TV series for like 2 years on ABC. What was that? I never heard of that. Let me know what that was. Terry Funk was in a lot of great films, though. But that's it. I'll keep this short. This was only an hour movie. It's on YouTube. Search it up. It's pretty entertaining. And I would highly suggest it if you're a fan of Jesse Ventura or Roddy Piper. You're really going to love it because it's a I don't know if you would call it a movie or a pilot, but it is like it shows 1991, what wrestling was like, what the commercials were like, and what the world was like in 1991. It's like a trip back down memory lane for those of you that were around then. I think I would have been in grade 1-ish at that time. Have a good night.